This needs to happen. Should Blizzard do this? This thing would change the game forever. Let's see what Marcelian has to say about this big change that he thinks Blizzard should put in the game, or should at least be an add-on.
Hello YouTube, Marcelian Online is cooking up something spicy for you today.
Burn it!
What if I told you
Sylvanas
that one
reference.
add-on could change WoW forever? You might
I would tell you I'm not downloading it. Get the fuck out of here. I don't do add-ons. But I'll let the man cook.
think I am being overly dramatic, or, God forbid, the C word.
Yeah, Tidewell.
Clickbaity. But I think it's true, and definitely a reality. It can even be a baseline game feature, seeing as how we just got Cooldown Manager with the recent 11.1.5 patch that is supposed to partially replace weak auras. What I'm talking about is an add-on that will replace the DPS meter and reward good players for playing good regardless of their damage outputs. First of all, the reason we are saying this would be an add-on is that the WoW team usually takes a few years to implement big sweeping changes to the game, and I'm not sure this would rank highly on their priority.
That's true, but I'd rather just wait for Blizzard to put it in the game. We don't know what it is yet. I haven't let the man cook yet, but I want less add-ons in the game. I think for the game to be healthy, for the game to be good for new players, for returning players, the best way is that add-ons are not required to play the game.
List. But it should, because it's a legitimate concern that players have, and this whole video idea came from a recent comment we got on one of our videos. See guys, we read or have ChatGPT AI text-to-speech as the feel-good comments. But now we are getting sidetracked. Vandalay81 essentially is saying that someone should make a score meter add-on to replace the DPS meter, and this add-on would award players a personal score based on the mechanics that player did. Two things with this one.
Oh, I like it. So a mechanics add-on. This would be great, considering that stupid-ass add-on that's being put into the game. People have been talking about it, the one that's supposed to show your parse score, right? Like what kind of parse you put out. This would be a good offset to that, because fucking parsers don't do mechanics. Everyone knows that. So a good old, hey, have you done mechanics add-on? And that would be, I would enjoy that one. For once, I can actually get behind this add-on.
That is an idea that points out a real problem that we have with player responsibility, the expectations of a group, and overall performance of said group relative to the content they engage with, making this an actual good solution, if not for the second.
The question is, how would they do this?
Not good enough. This isn't to dismiss Vandalay81's idea, but more to build on it, since replacing the DPS meter is not a good solution. Let's talk about why the DPS meter is actually crucial for...
I'll be honest, though. I don't think this would replace the DPS meter. I think you would want to see somebody who pumps and does mechanics. You don't want somebody who just does mechanics. So how is that going to help? You need both to get a raid boss killed, or to get far into a Mythic Plus key.
WoW, and why adding on it will also
It'd be supplemental
save it.
to
Every bit of WoW
damage
content
meter
that is endgame related is competitive or difficult to a degree. In Delves, if you play poorly, you can fail them by dying too many times, which will make it so that you lose the rewards and have to start over. In non-LFR raids, you can spend hours and days progressing a boss fight, and if the damage is insufficient, your healers will run out of mana, the phase of the boss will never change, or the boss itself will enrage.
Most bosses have an enrage, so you're going to get DPS checked at some point if you don't have enough DPS. I'll be honest, I don't understand why Blizzard hasn't added in DPS meters into the game. Maybe they think it breeds toxicity, or it creates like this, but you literally have eye levels in the game. So, I mean, there's that judgment already happening before you get invited. But I don't know. I think they must be trying to avoid like the issue of toxicity in the game or something. And that's the reason. Because damage meters are literally pulling the data from the game. The data's there. It would be so easy for Blizzard to just implement their own DPS meters, but they just haven't done it.
Wiping the group. In Mythic Plus, if we are not aware we are doing piss poor DPS, we will run out of time and fail the key and have no idea what needs to be done to improve that outcome. In every scenario
I don't know what
mentioned,
Blizzard's
the
reasoning
DPS
is for
meter
not doing
add-on
it.
helps create feedback in letting the player know of their performance, which is directly correlated with the outcome of the encounter. Of course, other people will use it to judge their party members, which is inevitable, possibly even required for endgame content. But where we draw the line is using it as a catalyst for insecurity, toxicity, and bringing people down.
Yeah.
The player who think and say that a DPS meter add-on is not required or worse, ruining the game, either doesn't engage in endgame content in a difficult manner, or is the player that is struggling to keep up with everyone and is on the receiving end of the toxicity bullshit.
Yeah, no, I like the DPS meter. It's constructive feedback for yourself. I mean, I'll look at it and I'll be like, yeah, I did good on that rotation. I did good in that pull, or I didn't. I personally think like that is the one add-on that I always need. I download it instantly. If I build a new PC tomorrow and I got to re-download add-ons, the first thing I'm downloading is a DPS meter. And I'm a tank. But I just want to make sure that I'm doing my rotation right. I'm pumping correctly. I'm doing things the right way. And DPS is a way to kind of gauge whether you're doing that or not. And it also helps you, when you're raid leading, to trim things down, to understand where the problems and the pain points are.
In the first case, yes, you don't need a DPS.
Do some people use it for toxic reasons? Of course. It's a tool that can be used for good or evil.
Add-on to do heroic dungeons and LFR raids or even solo delves. For anything more difficult than that or involving other people,
Very
I'm
true,
sorry,
Tidewell.
but yes, in cooperative team gameplay that's competitive by nature, you do need a gauge of performance for each individual's contribution. That's just how teamwork works.
Cadence, that's fake lore. Fake lore in the chat.
Otherwise, just one person ends up doing the entire project while the others just go out to party and club. And is that my university experience? The reason people are mostly toxic towards what they would call bad players is because their reward is based on the performance of everyone involved, and having people massively underperform will legit waste everyone's time.
Yeah.
I want to emphasize massively here. Some nerds go apeshit over someone doing just a little bit less damage while having no cooldowns or enough targets for their AoE to ramp and scale up.
Right.
Those people are morons. Ignore the morons. But there are also people who don't really care to do much, who don't learn their class and are just comfortable sitting in the back, dying in the first few seconds of a fight and expecting to loot a treasure chest at the end. Those people,
Yeah.
I would argue, are the main reason toxicity towards bad players.
The early deaths are killer. They really are. Especially in a boss fight or something, you're just dead weight at that point. You die to the first mechanic in the fight, and now basically you've put the burden of carrying your mistake on the entire raid for the rest of the fight.
Exists. And now we get to why the suggestion from our commenter is not enough. If we agree that we need some way to track a person's performance that is not just their DPS, awarding score for different actions than DPS would fall into one of those actions by default. And what would those actions be, and how much score should people get? That would be very difficult to decide, and you would need to be able to quantify the value of every obstacle present within an encounter. A dangerous spell not interrupted versus how many enemies you stunned at once versus the amount of damage you prevented with your defensive.
Yeah, interrupts and avoiding damage, that'd be big for Mythic Plus, like some kind of score. Because I know a lot of people that go into Mythic Plus, and you could tell during the run, you can even look at the damage meters to, put in the category of interrupt. You can see they're not interrupting at all. Now then you look at their damage and they're high as shit. It's because they're just tunneling. They're parsing their ass off on every pull, and they're saying everyone else can worry about interrupts. I gotta be top on the meter.
Cooldown usage, and so
It'd be nice
on.
to be able to judge them.
My 2 cents on this would be that the WoW team either needs to use the logs from raids and dungeons, and together with their encounter team that normally should know how important a spell is or how important surviving a specific mechanic should be, devise a scoring system akin to the Mythic Plus system score. But since that is a bit unrealistic, an add-on that does this would be more likely because, let's be honest, the best UI designers for the game are likely not...
Should Blizzard put in a player score into the game? The problem is, like, if you do this, you do create like a sense of judgment in that somebody's character could be rendered like unplayable. Like they could really enjoy playing their arcane mage or something, but nobody will invite them because their player score is super low. Now, would that be their fault because they fucking stand in the fire all the time and then lowers their player score? Maybe this would be good for those people because it would get them to actually do the mechanics.
The WoW
Goes
team,
both
or
ways.
not on the WoW team yet, but rather are the unsung heroes that create add-ons for free for the community. I'll end my disclaimer with this statement.
We already have that Raider IO. No, Raider IO shows like what you've killed, but it doesn't show how you did on the mechanics of the fight. It doesn't show that.
Blizzard should hire the
That's
top
what this is
add-on
supposed to
designers
do.
to work on the actual game UI so we can have a better looking game baseline, and these people a paycheck, ideally a fat one. So if we are assuming, we could realistically have an add-on that uses game logs or some sort of game data.
And also, if you're talking about going to the site of Raider.io and checking how that's not viable, right? It has to be in game. Can't use that external
to track
source.
player activity the way DPS meters do. Since Details actually tracks most of these already, then we could have an add-on that does something like this. For interrupts, we normally have three main types of spells. Filler spells that are spammable by mobs, important casts that can kill a player, and casts that cannot be interrupted but need to be crowd controlled. To make a point, let's say for every filler spell you interrupt, you get 1 score point.
Man, Conicia, you just made me think people buy scores all the time. That's true. This would be a really good way to find the people that bought their shit. Because a lot of times people who buy their kills and everything else, they were clearly not doing the mechanics at all during the fight. They were probably dead while they were getting carried through the kill. So, I mean, that player's score, if you see somebody who's like 6 of 8 mythic, but their player's score is like complete and utter trash, you put 2 and 2 together and you're like, yeah, this person probably bought those fucking kills. That'd be a good way to find those people.
Every big cast, you get 5. And for the casts that are deemed wiping the entire group, you get 7 points per stop. If you pull the Paladin pack in Priory, every Sacred Soul that you use a defensive for, you get, let's say, 10 points. And similarly, for any cast that is usually dangerous to just engage with Natty...
Piloted carries? What do you mean piloted carries? I mean, at least this what would happen, Cahoots, is if they're buying the carry, they would still have to learn the mechanics while they're in the carry because they want to keep their player score up, right? Like, they would want to know what they got to dodge, what they got to do. Even if they don't do a single ounce of DPS, they're going to have to know how to dodge and do the certain mechanics and interrupt and do everything else to make sure that their player score is reflective of their kills. So maybe it would help them learn the fight.
You would get those 10 points. Every root you dispel, you get 5 points. Every actual debuff you dispel, another 5 points. Add to this, we could deduct points for deaths, although Mythic Plus is already penalizing you for it, and sometimes that is not even your fault. Maybe with this we can probably agree that stuff outside of your control should not be included since it wouldn't be very productive at all.
Yeah.
But with all of that, how would it look in practice? Let's take a dungeon I recently did, which was an 11 Floodgate on my Balanced Druid. I will be taking all my data from the log on this dungeon while showing you on screen exactly how the casts and stops went, and also, to make it simpler and shorter, I will compare myself only with the Resto Shaman here, so you can get an idea of the value that we both contributed to the party. Then I will explain all of this, considering that, of course, I am a Balanced Druid with a 45 to 1 minute interrupt spell that can instead AoE silence if played correctly. So across the dungeon, I did a total of 23 stops and interrupts, while the Shaman here did 41. Those stops were the surveying beams that, based on the previous scoring system, would
WoW players are such, like, they chase the bone, right? You put the bone in front of them, WoW players are going to chase it. This is a bone. This is telling people, hey, you got to interrupt. You got to get out of the fire. You got to pick up the bomb and move it, or whatever the mechanic is. You incentivize people with a score like this, they're going to do the shit. It's going to become a fight to interrupt. It's going to be great. I would love this.
5 points each. I stopped 1, the Shaman stopped 5 as an example. I would get 5 points, the Shaman would get 25. And we can keep going.
It would cause everyone to spam interrupts. People would be, like I said, racing to interrupt, but that's a better situation than what we get right now, where some people just don't interrupt at all so they can finish their parse.
Throughout the dungeon. The exact number doesn't really matter, only the difference does. Based on the scoring system I suggested, I would end up with a total of 84 points, and the Shaman with a whopping 162 points. This is just for interrupts and crowd controls on casts.
Damn.
We could extend this to defensives.
Now, if you have an AoE interrupt, that would even help you even more.
Like I mentioned. So
like
usage
like
of DPS potions and flasks, combat resurrects, bloodlusts, root dispels, and so on. The question after this is, what do we do with this information? At the moment, we don't do anything with the DPS of players anyway, so we don't really need to do anything with the rest either. But we could, and I think we should. This score could be associated with that player in the same way that the Raider.io score is. So
mechanics done, interrupts, crowd control, defensives used, nice. Overall DPS, and then you get a player score. Okay. So he's including DPS, I think, in his scoring model.
When you have a good player, you can see that. despite them not playing a meta class. And now we can solve one of the biggest issues in WoW.
I don't like this keys failed. I don't want this in here. I mean, technically, people can just look and see which keys you failed anyways, if you completed the keys. What would kind of be good about this is those people who abandon keys. There's people who do this all the time. They will abandon a key before it's finished, so it doesn't show up as a failed key for them. Because if you complete it and you didn't do the timer, then it counts as a fail and people can see it. But if you're a degenerate piece of shit and you just leave at the last boss before the dungeon is actually completed, it never counts against you, at least according to what people can see.
The bring the class, not the player, which
Hold on, did he have dungeons abandoned? Keys abandoned. This is great. Okay, this is good. I like that because, yeah, fuck the people who abandon keys. Seriously, then if I see somebody who's got 103 keys completed and, say, 56 keys abandoned and no failed runs, I'd be like, well, fuck this guy. He just leaves the second anything goes wrong. Piece of shit. I wouldn't invite him.
of the biggest issues in
This
WoW,
will be good.
the bring the class, not the player, which ironically has always been inverted, saying bring the player, not the class. But we all know that's not how it works in practice. We were doing a plus 13 a few days ago with a Fury Warrior, applying to that Fury Warrior's group since he was a pug, while we were 4 people. Fury is a terrible spec for M+.
By the way, keys abandoned, for me, if you were going to count that metric, it should only count against the first person to leave the key, because obviously, you know, like I 4-manned the key the other day, that +6, but, you know, that take a lot of skill. It's a big dick moment, you know, you got to have a big dick blood DK tank like me to be able to do something like that. But once the first player leaves, if everyone else just leaves after that, it shouldn't count as abandoned key for those people. Just the first leaver should get the abandonment mark on them.
Or at least that's what people think. My Fury Warrior friend, that's 2.9k IO score, close to 3k, cleared a few 13s and all 12s, and can barely get into a +8 key at the moment, which is beyond stupid. But the Fury Warrior that we pugged, and
Even if so, no, DCing shouldn't count as an abandonment. You have to click the leave button. You could DC and just stay in the dungeon forever. Oh, you're saying if one of the people DC, yeah, that would be tough. Yeah, if somebody DCs, so then other people have to leave, and then it becomes a fight. Well, who's gonna leave first? That's an off issue. Yeah, I guess you could track it that in a way. If there's a DC'd player, then leaving doesn't count. I don't know how the data on the back end works. Maybe there's a way to do that. Maybe there isn't.
ended up doing all of the kicks possible, taking Shredation out of melee so I can keep DPSing, leaping out of melee range for a lot of other mechanics, basically shooting himself in the foot just
then
to
you'd
be
have
of
to play the
value to
waiting
the
game.
team, since he knew he was not meta. I was a much better boss DPS spec than he was. I was also a better AoE spec than
Or somebody intentionally DCs instead of leaving the group. I guess, man, fucking degens. I swear to God, WoW players think of this shit so quickly. he
was. So what did he do?
That's
Instead of
tough one.
trying to one-up me and
But
just
at the same time, you know, that person, like the people who typically leave keys just want to jump into the next one right away. So DCing and then waiting for other people to leave the key is so much more time consuming for them. It's almost a punishment in and of itself, right? It creates a punishment where like, okay, you want to play the DC game? Well, now you're out of the game for like 5-10 minutes. You got to wait. Whereas a lot of these people, they just typically leave the dungeon and go join another key within 30 seconds. So I guess it makes leaving a little bit harder.
blast DPS meters, he just took it upon himself to be extra proactive with mechanics and general responsibilities. This kind of a player is an absolute gem.
Blizzard does have a deserter debuff already, so they probably do have ways of tracking this stuff.
These players will remain unknown because there is no real way for them to advertise their value outside the name of their spec and what that implies. Fury Warrior, low DPS, target capped, no measurable way to contribute to a party with utility, no combat res, no bloodlust, no dispel, no DPS. I think I said that twice. But as we know, that is not all that matters in WoW. Whether it is raids or dungeons, we recently made a video where I pointed out that even in raids, people who do mechanics despite their DPS suffering are unsung heroes, and their parses, based off of which they will be judged, will not show that fact. In conclusion, we need an add-on that tracks interrupts and crowd control usage, tracks defensives used against heavy incoming damage, tracks utility use to help party members, and mechanics done to increase the success chance of an encounter, and give all of these a score.
I mean, I can imagine mechanics done. It would be like, you know, rolling around in the trash balls and in that what the hell is the trash ball boss fight, whatever it is, rolling the coins back in the one-armed bandit fight. What would it be in killing the ads in Muggsy? You know, like doing all these stuff, picking up the bombs in the Gallywix fight. Like, there's so many different mechanics. Like, yeah, you should get a point for doing that shit, because technically when you're doing stuff like that, running over to pick up the coin and launch it back towards the raid so people can pick up, when you're doing stuff like, you're hurting your DPS. You are, obviously. You're not DPSing when you're doing that shit. And who's getting the DPS? The guy who you rolled the coin by him, so he got the haste buff, and he was just doing DPS the entire time. He doesn't give a shit about the mechanic. So you just helped that guy and you hurt yourself. So yeah, mechanics done, score would be nice.
That would total up to that player's value contribution to a party. And this would be extended to healer issues as well. Also tanks, I guess. What if this add-on showed how much damage was prevented by a Devotion Aura, Blessing of Protection, and Aura Mastery? Would Holy Paladin have a general score?
There is a haste buff. What are you talking about, Libor? If you stand by the coin as it rolls by and not get hit by it, you get a haste buff.
Higher than a Discipline Priest? Would normally unheard of DPS specs receive a much-deserved spotlight?
It's not haste? What is it?
I like to think so. Instead of whining about how the DPS meter is ruining the game, what if we used that sort of add-on to promote healthy gaming ethics and reward players that are actually helpful instead of spamming their DPS buttons? We could create a community that will be less focused on meta specs. It's a 10% damage and healing.
Okay, all right, my bad. I'm not a DPSer, so I don't pay that much attention to what the fuck it's doing. I know you get an increase. Yeah, there you go.
Focused on the value of the player they invite to their group, further incentivizing people to
haste would buff my damage. Same fucking thing. Okay, whatever. I was wrong. Eat shit.
Proactively play to
so confident being wrong always,
rather than their own overall DPS. And because DPS isn't the only thing that matters, we made a tier list ranking all DPS specs in the game based on their performance, but also how fun and cool design they are.
Nice video. Yeah, do we want to see this in WoW? Is this something you want to see Blizzard do? I think so. I mean, if we're going to get that stupid-ass add-on that allows you to see people's parsing, I would think this would be necessary at that point, because parsers are just going to benefit so much from being able to parse, from not doing anything else but doing their best DPS rotation and letting everyone else deal with mechanics. I think something that shows mechanics done would, one, eliminate the desire for people to parse. Two, it would also give you a way to track people who are just paying for their kills. And three, it would help you track abandoners, right? People who just run away from problems anytime there's a difficulty in the game, they just abandon the group. So I would like to see it. Will Blizzard do it? Probably not. But good video from Marcelli.